MegaPodTastic.
Good morning, MegaPodlings. It's Krazy Joe, and yesterday I did a ranking video of my favorite Star Trek TV series from least favorite to favorite, and we're going to do it again. This one's going to be a little longer because today we're doing Star Trek movies, and there's 13 Star Trek movies as opposed to only 6 Star Trek TV shows. This is in anticipation of the premiere of Star Trek Picard, which premieres this week. So starting with my least favorite, going up to my favorite, let's get right to it. My favorite Star Trek movies. Coming in at number 13, my least favorite Star Trek movie, and probably the only Star Trek movie that I would say is out and out bad, because most of them do have redeeming qualities. Even if they're not great, they got something to them. This one's just bad. And that's coming in at number 13, Star Trek Nemesis, the final film for the Next Generation crew. The Next Generation crew deserved a much better send-off than this. There's so much wrong with this movie. One of the biggest problems is the villain, Shinzon, has no clear motivation. The Romulans did him wrong. It was the Romulans who made a clone of Picard. It was the Romulans who decided to ditch the project. It was the Romulans who stuck him in the mines on Remus. It was the Romulans that did him wrong. So what beef does he have against the Federation? It's never clearly defined. Why is he going up against the Federation? He should have no problem. Picard never did anything to him. And I know there's this whole thing about trying to separate himself from Picard and prove he's a different person, but it just doesn't work. This villain has no clear motivation. And the continuity with the other Star Trek is very, very shaky. I mean, it never violates canon. Like, it never does anything that violates canon. But it just seems extremely odd. Extremely odd that when they find B4, they never, ever make any reference to lore. They're like, oh, wow, another Soong-type android. Like, this is something we've never seen before, except you have lore, and nobody ever thinks to even say, like, could this be lore? Like, no, the name lore is never mentioned. Like, they act like this is the first time they ever found a brother for Data. It's very strange. It doesn't work. Then Data has a death scene. No problem with Data dying. I get why Brent Spiner wanted Data to die, because he was visibly aging, and Data's not supposed to age. I get that. And you know what? And killing off Data, quite frankly, it was a good idea. Brent Spiner was right. He was getting older. Data's not supposed to age. They could have done something really convoluted, like, oh, he added an aging program. But it feels like a cheat. You know what I mean? It doesn't feel legit. Now they have the technology. They can make people younger. I think that's what they're trying to do on the Picard show. We saw the trailer. It looks like they're trying to digitally de-age Brent Spiner. They didn't have that technology in O2. They didn't know they were going to have that technology in O2. So I got no problem with killing Data off. But his death was unemotional. Like when Spock died, everybody, you know, if you didn't have tears rolling down your cheek when Spock died, you're inhuman, or you're a Vulcan maybe. But Data, there was no emotion behind his death. It was just goodbye. It's like, was Data on that ship? Like, I mean, Kirk in Generations got a death scene. Spock in Wrath of Khan got a death scene. Data just said goodbye and his ship blew up. He deserved a better death scene than that, quite frankly. Also, then there's the whole thing with Shinzon being a clone of Picard, except Tom Hardy doesn't look anything like Patrick Stewart, except they shaved his head. And suddenly we're supposed to be like, oh, well, Picard was always bald. And then they have a picture of Tom Hardy as Cadet Picard, and he's bald. But we saw in episodes like Tapestry that Picard did have hair at one time, so it doesn't work. It's a dumb movie all around. Number 13, Star Trek Nemesis. Worst Star Trek movie ever made. Anyway, coming in at number 12, Star Trek Into Darkness. What can I say about Star Trek Into Darkness? I like Benedict Cumberbatch, but he ain't Khan. I'll be honest, when I heard Khan was going to be the villain in this, I was already kind of soured on it, because I'm like, you just created an alternate timeline so that you can have a fresh playground to do whatever you want. And the first thing you do is bring back a villain we've already seen. Why not do something new? You just gave yourself a whole new timeline to play in. You could do anything. Why are we doing this? But I'll give them credit. Like I said, even the bad ones have some redeeming qualities. I was actually enjoying Into Darkness for most of the movie, because I was like, well, all right. You know, I would have rathered you did something other than Khan again, but at least it's not a remake. At least it's not a rehash. You didn't do a rehash of Space Seed. You didn't do a rehash of Wrath of Khan. This is an original, brand new story involving the Khan character. I'm okay with that. Then we got to like the last 20 minutes of the movie, and it all went to hell. Whereas early in the film I praised them for not being a rehash, then they totally shot for shot rehashed Spock's death from Wrath of Khan, and the only change they made was they flipped it and made it Kirk this time. But I'm like, oh my God, all the goodwill you had from me, you just flushed down the toilet, because this is rehash now, and I didn't want rehash. And for the bulk of the movie, you didn't do rehash. You did a brand new story, and now you're going to finish up with rehash. And then to add insult to injury, they cured death. Terrible movie. And, you know, and if you cut the last 20 minutes off, I don't really have a problem with this movie. I actually kind of like it. But that last 20 minutes kills the movie. And also, it would have been better if we found out that Benedict Cumberbatch was not Khan. Because, like, let's face it, Khan, he's the wrong ethnicity for Khan. Khan is supposed to be of Indian descent. So Ricardo Montalban technically he wasn't even the right race to be playing Khan. But, you know, it worked better than, you know, Cumberbatch. Cumberbatch was totally wrong. It would have been better if at the end of the movie we found out he was not Khan. He was one of Khan's minions, one of Khan's supermen, trying to protect his leader, who was still frozen in the cryostasis. And to try to protect him, he took the identity and said, I'm Khan, so they wouldn't find the boss. You know, basically, like, I'm going to protect my boss's identity. That would have worked a little better, but they didn't do that. Anyway, Into Darkness. No good. Number 11 is a much better film than the bottom two. And I'll tell you, the number one thing that kills it for me is the score, the musical score. Number 11 is Star Trek Generations, the first movie with the Next Generation crew. It's not a terrible movie, and it's pretty good the way it bridges the two generations and brings Kirk and Picard together and passes the torch. It does a lot of good, and I don't hate this movie by any means. But the score, the musical score, it was by Dennis McCarthy, I believe, who did the TV series music, and it feels like a TV theme. It feels like TV music. And that musical score really can make a huge difference. You know, we've got Jerry Goldsmith doing the scores to some of these. Michael Giacchino did the scores to these. James Horner. That score by Dennis McCarthy. And, oh, God. It kills the movie. I gotta say it. It really does. It makes it feel like you're watching a made-for-TV movie. I think, actually, if you went back and had Jerry Goldsmith rescore this whole... Now, I know we can't do that. He's dead. But if Jerry Goldsmith was alive and you had him rescore this entire movie, I think it would feel more cinematic. That's just me. But it's an okay movie. It does a good job passing the torch, and there's a lot to like in there. But again, it feels like a TV movie to me, and I think it's the musical score that does it. All right, coming in at number 10. This is a movie that is, for me, hard to love and impossible to hate. Number 10 is Star Trek the Motion Picture, the one that started it all. I remember as a kid, I thought this movie was painfully boring. I got older, I started to appreciate it. There's a lot to love in this movie. Lots of love. My God, it's the most beautiful looking of all the Star Trek movies. The special effects and the, oh my God, Jerry Goldsmith's score and the costumes. I love the uniforms in this one. Captain Kirk has a uniform. I did when I saw Star Trek: The Motion Picture on the big screen, I did a review of it. And Kirk has a uniform I always call the golf shirt uniform. I love the golf shirt uniform. And the Admiral uniform with the white tunic. Oh, man. The uniforms are just so beautiful to look at. And everything about this movie, it's a beautiful looking movie. It's also slow. It is. But the story is pretty good. The pacing not great, but the story's good, and it's great seeing the cast come back together again. McCoy has that great scene where he gets beamed aboard and he's got the beard and he doesn't want to be here. They drafted me, Jim. they enacted a seldom known reactivation clause. Some of you out there are such big Star Trek fans, you know the dialogue line for line. You know what? And so do I. But it's kind of late right now, so I know I'm saying the lines wrong. So, but a lot to love in that movie. A lot to love. But it is a little slow, and something's off. I think it was their first movie, and they were, Robert Wise was trying to meet a deadline, and it doesn't gel the way you want it to. But I still kind of love it. All right. Coming in at number 9, Star Trek Insurrection. Star Trek Insurrection again. The good and the bad. The good and the bad. The good. Beautiful Jerry Goldsmith score. Charming story. The story is it's just charming. It's a small little story and it's very Star Trek. It's very Star Trek in its core. This village, and they're being forcibly relocated, and Picard knows it's wrong, and Picard's like, we got to do something about it. It's a very, very Star Trek story. It's a smaller story coming off of First Contact, which was a big story. This scales it back a little, and it's terrific. It's really a terrific little movie. But why is it so low on my list? Well, it gets hampered by some really cheesy jokes. And I love humor. Don't get me wrong. I love humor. I love humor in my Star Trek. Star Trek's a very funny show. I mean, the characters, humor works so well in Star Trek. The Dr. McCoy feuding with Spock, that's funny. And Data, the misunderstanding humanity, it's funny. And you can get a lot of good laughs out of Star Trek. But Worf with a Pimple and Deanna Troi and Beverly Crusher talking about how firm their boobs are, the humor really falls flat in this movie, and that's what kills it. There's a couple lines that are hilarious. I'll give you. There's a couple things that really are legitimately funny, like when Riker shaves and he says, "Smooth as an android's bottom," and Data's like, Data's butt was much smoother. It was much smoother. And I also really enjoy the oh man, I just blanked. Oh yeah, I enjoyed. It's stupid, but I enjoyed. I've been programmed to act as a flotation device in the case of a water landing. Yes, it's dumb, but I enjoyed it. So yeah, no, the humor is what, or the use of cheesy humor. Let me put it that way, is what kind of sinks Insurrection for me. But it's still a very likable movie because it's just a nice story, and it's very Star Trek. And Jerry Goldsmith's score, my God. Speaking of Jerry Goldsmith, coming in at number 8, another fantastic Jerry Goldsmith score, and a movie that is unfairly maligned. We're actually, getting into the movies I actually really like now. I really like, from 8 up, I really like all these movies. And I just like some more than others. That's it. But number 8, the unfairly maligned Star Trek V, The Final Frontier. Star Trek V, The Final Frontier does not deserve the hate it gets. It really doesn't. It's a movie that was kind of groundbreaking in a lot of ways. All right, the special effects were terrible. But the story, they introduced something that would go on to be something we'd see in Star Trek. A Vulcan who views things different than the rest of the Vulcans. With Sybok, we have a Vulcan who rejects logic, embraces emotion, embraces passion. And at the time, we'd never seen that before. But then, in Enterprise, we started seeing different facets of the Vulcans. We started seeing Vulcans who were kind of like, we don't really want these humans out there. These humans, why are they, they're not ready. And we start kind of seeing, then we find out on Enterprise that mind melding, the Vulcans who have the ability to mind meld were kind of shunned by Vulcan society. And we find out, Vulcans have prejudice. So, I mean, in the original series, all Vulcans logical, good, cannot tell a lie. And then we get this movie that's like, here's a Vulcan who doesn't follow that path. And then the other shows, they kind of piggybacked on that. As much as people complained about the Final Frontier at the time, we started seeing more and more complex Vulcans as time went on. And it makes sense, because could you look at our society today? Can you imagine all of us agreeing on something? We don't agree on anything. We're at each other's throats on you voted for that guy? I hate you. Well, I hate you. You voted for that guy. Well, you like The Last Jedi? What's wrong with you? Last Jedi's great. What's wrong with you? Everyone's at each other's throats about everything now. So you imagine a leader comes out and says, hey, guess what? Guess what, guys? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to suppress all emotion. Just logic. That's it. Just logic. Can you see the entire society saying, I'm in. Let's do this. Let's get rid of the emotion. No, you're going to have the people who are going to say, I ain't doing that. What's wrong with you? And Sybok was the first time Star Trek showed us that guy who's like, I'm not doing that. What do you mean? And now in Discovery, we saw some Vulcans who tried to assassinate Sarek because they thought he was, they didn't like the way he was living his life with a human wife and a human adopted daughter. All of this really kind of springboards from Sybok. Sybok was kind of a harbinger of what was to come with the Vulcans. We just had never seen that before. We had never seen a Vulcan who was different from the rest, and now we have. I really thought Sybok was a great character, and I thought there were some great ideas in that movie. And I enjoy, and that's another one, the humor, I enjoy the humor in that one, because the humor kind of comes from the characters. Like when you have Sulu and Chekhov lost in the woods, that's funny. And it's funny because it's Chekhov and Sulu, and they're the navigator and the helmsman on the starship, and they're lost. And when Scotty says, I know the ship like the back of my hand, bonk, that's funny because it's Scotty, and he does know that ship like the back of his hand. So it kind of comes from the characters, and I like that humor better. But, yeah, number 8 is Final Frontier. Underrated movie. Underrated. All right, now coming in at number 7, I have Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home. A lot of people think Star Trek IV: The Voyage Home is one of the best. I have it all the way down at 7. You may be like, why? And I'll tell you why. It's good. It's a great movie. Don't get me wrong. It's a great movie. But some of the humor is kind of dumb. Like the scene where Chekhov is being interrogated, and they said, name, my name? No, my name. I do not know your name. Yeah, they've really played Chekhov to be like a dummy. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. Fish out of water. We're going for the fish out of water. He's in a different time and everything. But I think if I watched the original series, you could find an episode where Kirk says to someone, name. And they know what name means. They know that name means their name. They're not going to say, my name? So the idea that Chekhov wouldn't know what he meant when he said name, just because it's a different time period, it made Chekhov look stupid, quite frankly. I don't think that joke worked. A lot of the fish out of water jokes, yeah, they're funny. They are funny. I like them. But, I mean, we also get that kind of thing in an Austin Powers movie, you know? It's like, it works, but don't get me wrong. I like this movie. It's just that there's 6 I like more. Okay. Speaking of which, number 6, Star Trek 2009. The first movie with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. Oh my gosh. I didn't expect to like this movie. recasting Kirk, recasting Spock. How are you going to do that? And it just worked. It worked. They really did a fantastic job, especially the idea of creating a separate timeline. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. You create a separate timeline, you can do whatever you want. Continuity does not matter anymore, but you also don't affect anything that came before because that's in a separate timeline. That's preserved. It was genius. It was a really, really good idea. And the cast, all the parts were cast well. Leonard Nimoy, big boots to fill. Zachary Quinto does it. The two best, if you ask me, were Simon Pegg as Scotty and Carl Urban as McCoy. They were perfect. Absolutely perfect. It's just a great movie. I really enjoyed that film a lot. And it's a film I was nervous about going into. I was like, what are you going to do to my precious Star Trek? This is something I love deeply. Are you going to crap all over it? And I walked out and was like, wow, that was delightful. That was delightful. But it was even better. My number 5 pick, Star Trek Beyond, the most recent Star Trek movie and the last Star Trek movie that we saw with Chris Pine and Zachary Quinto. At this point in time, it's still up in the air if they're coming back for a fourth. We're hearing rumors they are. Then we're hearing now maybe it's going to be something completely different. I don't know. But Beyond was, of the 3 movies they did, it was absolutely the best. It felt like an episode of the original series. And there was a lot of nods to Enterprise. The Franklin was an NX class ship. And the main villain was a Mako. So we got some nice tie-in to Enterprise there. And this is a movie that works. It works all the way around. It works. And Jayla? Jayla, she was terrific. The new character they introduced, she was great. Last movie that Anton Yelchin ever starred in, which is very sad. And we got that nice little tribute to the original series when Spock Prime has passed away, but we get that nice cast photo from Star Trek V. It's good seeing the old guys again. Yeah, this is a great movie, and I always say it's the best Star Trek movie in 20 years. I always say that, best Star Trek movie in 20 years, because the movie came out in 2016, and the last Star Trek movie to come out that was that good came out in 1996. And that's my number 4 pick. Number 4 is Star Trek First Contact. What's not to like about this movie? My God, best of the Next Generation movies. By far best of the Next Generation movies. You got the Borg back. You introduce the Borg Queen. This movie is just... This is a perfect movie. Everybody loves Star Trek First Contact, don't they? I think everyone does. Again, great Jerry Goldsmith score. Jonathan Frakes' directorial debut for a movie. I mean, he directed episodes of the series, but this is the first movie Jonathan Frakes directed. This is as good as it gets. It's a shame that the Next Generation movies never reached that level again, but, let's just be happy with what we got, because we may not have gotten that at all, right? But we got Star Trek First Contact, They made 4 movies. One of them was tremendous, and that's my number 4 pick, Star Trek First Contact. Coming in at number 3, the final film to star the original cast, Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. Oh man, do I love Star Trek VI. I remember seeing this. I was in high school when it came out. I saw it about 20 times in the theater. I just kept going back and back. Every weekend I went and saw Star Trek VI. It was ridiculous. I saw the movie like 20 times in the theater. I'm not kidding you. I mean, I was a kid. I had disposable income. Wasn't old enough to go to a bar. What was I going to do? I just kept going and seeing Star Trek 6. Let's go see Star Trek 6 again. Let's go see Star Trek 6 again. So good. Really, just terrific. Christopher Plummer's a great villain. Nice parallel to the fall of the Soviet Union, which had happened not long ago. Great send-off for this crew. Love everything about this movie. I love Star Trek 6. My number 2 pick, Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. Leonard Nimoy's directorial debut. And the perfect follow-up to Wrath of Khan. I love Wrath of Khan. Wrath of Khan's a great movie, but, you can't watch Wrath of Khan and not go right into Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. You have to. You have to. How do you not? You can't leave Spock dead. You gotta see him come back, right? You gotta see him come back. And this movie does it perfectly. When you're resurrecting a character from the dead, it's always an iffy proposition. They really nailed it in this film. Robin Curtis replacing Kirstie Alley as Saavik, but she did a good job. Kirstie Alley, big shoes to fill. Robin Curtis, pretty good. We say goodbye to the Enterprise. We say goodbye to David. We had a great villain in Lord Kruge, Christopher Lloyd's Klingon. This is a guy. Oh my God! You know who I love? The man with the ears. Yes, Genesis. How could you be deaf with ears like that? Genesis allowed is not his planet forbidden. I love that alien. That guy's great. I want to see more of his species. They got to bring those guys back. Star Trek III: The Search for Spock. My number 2 pick. I love that movie. And finally, my number 1 pick. And it's no surprise, it's everyone's number 1 pick. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. You don't get better than Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. It's so great. Ricardo Montalban, terrific villain. You got the death scene. I still tear up when I watch Spock die. When Spock dies, a tear rolls down the cheek, and I know he's coming back, and it still gets me. Everything wrong with Data's death, right there, because, I get teary-eyed when Spock dies, and I know he's coming back. Data, nothing. And I love Data. I should feel something. So that's part of why Nemesis is number 13 and Wrath of Khan is number 1. Wrath of Khan is also the movie I own in the most formats. I own it on Blu-ray. I own it on VHS. I actually have a beta tape of it here. Look at that. I got Wrath of Khan on beta. So, I know my friend Cinema Sickness collects a lot of different formats. I do not. But Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is one of the few I do have in multiple formats. Where is the... Aha! Look at this. Yes. Again. Most formats for a movie. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan. So that is my number 1 pick. That's just about everybody's number 1 pick. I know I'm playing the favorite on that one, but it's the favorite for a reason. So there you go. 13-1. Worst to best. My favorite Star Trek movies. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you stuck with us on this. And bring on Picard. I can't wait. Let's see. Star Trek Picard. I'm excited. Keep wearing those pajamas.
Keep wearing those pajamas with the plastic feet. Keep wearing those pajamas. Tell everyone you meet. Keep wearing those pajamas with the back door flap. Keep wearing those pajamas. Don't open, it's a trap. Oh no, it's a trap. Some people call them PJs, some people call them jammies. They can come embroidered with big money and no whammies. They can have 100 tiny commander adamas, but no matter how they look, just keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep on wearing those pajamas. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now we're having fun. Keep wearing those pajamas. And now the song is done.